This is a demo to showcase CICD of an application using tools like Terraform for infrastructure setup, Bitbucket to manage our source code, Jenkins and Groovy for CI and CD, EKS with Helm to deploy our application, Ansible to template our charts, and at last Prometheus with Grafana to monitor health of our application. So let me walk you through my IAC repo. So the code will do the initial infrastructure setup first, like the VPC, subnets, route table association, along with that internet gateway and so on. So once the basic infrastructure is set, the code will proceed to provision the EKS. So to have a cluster created, we got to have the right role and the policies attached to it. So we're going to create the role first. I have named it as cluster role, and we have to attach the policy called Amazon EKS cluster policy to it. And with the right role, we're going to create the cluster. The same goes for the node group. So we're going to create the node group. We're going to create the role first, and we have to attach the below policies to the node group. And once the policies are attached, we can provision the node group. So once the node group is created and attached to the cluster, so what I'm doing there is I'm using a Helm module to deploy the Ingress and also Prometheus as charts. So I'm using charts to deploy the Ingress controller and also the Prometheus stack. Sample Node.js application with the detailed instruction on how to Dockerize it. So I have used a shared library approach to call the Groovy code to perform the CI/CD. In the Jenkins file, as you can see, I have called the build pipeline function. So the build pipeline consists of different stages like log into the ECR, clone the repo, build the images. Once the images are built, push the image to the ECR and to call the deployment. So once the deployment is completed, the user will be prompted with an option to promote the build to the higher environments like production. So to carry out the deployment, so once the deployment is called, the deployment is performed with the following configurations from the Jenkins file.groovy. Basically, the Jenkins file.groovy calls the Ansible. So this Ansible job, the job of this Ansible is just to template the YAML file, values.yaml file with the parameters which we are going to pass, which we are going to pass through the job, and this will help the charts to perform the deployment with the right values. Let me show. Invoke the build for a sample application Node.js under the branch Helm. Let's go through the logs. As I mentioned earlier, in the build pipeline.groovy, it does consist of different steps like log into the ECR and clone the repo and build the images. We can see the same in the logs. So the login is done here and the repo is cloned and the Docker is and the image is built. And once the image is built, the image has been uploaded to the ECR. So here the push is happening. The Docker push is done, and once the image is in the ECR, we have called the deployment job. So the deployment is performed using the Ansible. As you can see here, so the Ansible job is called with the appropriate right parameters to perform the deployment. Repository, I have kept the roles along with that my charts. Let's see the charts and the roles directory. Under the charts directory, I have a chart with templated deploy.yaml, service.yaml, and hpa.yaml files to deploy my sample application. And in my roles directory, I have a role to deploy my sample application with a templated values.yaml. The templated values.yaml is filled with variables which are required for deployment and service.yaml to deploy the chart. And the values for the values.yaml are passed during the deployment stage. So this is where the values.yaml gets its values. And in my task section, how I'm going to perform the deployment is as follows. So in one of the steps, I'm going to make sure that the right namespace is there. And in the second one, I'm going to copy the deployment.yaml, values.yaml with the right values. And in the last step, I'm going to deploy the chart with the right configurations. And once the chart is deployed, let's see here, I'm just going to proceed it to the higher environment. So the deployment job is going to get triggered again, but with different environment values. So once the chart is deployed, we are going to see the health of the charts in the Grafana. So as a part of infrastructure setup, we are deploying Prometheus with Grafana into the clusters through which we can see the health of this application. So we can see that this is one of the namespace which we have created to deploy our application, and this is our application health with all the parameters. So this concludes my demo. Thank you.